I'm here today with Jeremy, who has been on the program a number of times, and I always enjoy talking to Jeremy. I always learn something new. And Jeremy has had quite a year with some wonderful experiences that he wants to share with us, particularly his conversion to Orthodoxy and how that has played out in his family. And I'm really excited to hear about it. And then after that, we might look at some other issues, maybe look at how COVID has played out in Silicon Valley versus Salt Lake City. So let's see what happens.
All right, great. Yeah, it's been a long time since we talked. It's been like a year. You reached out to me in December and said, "Hey, let's talk about the COVID stuff." And and I saw your email and I was like, "Oh, I gotta respond. I gotta respond." But I was in the middle. I was at the time you emailed me. I was literally 2 weeks away from getting baptized in Orthodoxy, and that was really what was on my mind a lot at that time, and still is. I mean, it will be now for the rest of my life, I think. But so I didn't respond, and please forgive me. But I did. I recently saw your video with Richard Rowland, and I've become a recent fan of his. And I really enjoyed your conversation. And I thought, oh man, I need to reach out to Karen. We need to talk because I had a lot of things that have happened in my life of a very positive nature, and I'm also curious what's happened with your life over the last year. How's it been? How have you gone through COVID? How's it been? I mean, how's it going? Are you guys still in the middle of the mask stuff? I mean, you still going to carnival every time you go in public, or what's it like over there?
So I promised our viewers that they would hear from you first. So
Okay, all
you
right.
go first, and then
Okay,
I will go because I have had quite a year. So I have a lot to talk about.
okay. Well, I will. So yes, I was baptized on January 2nd, and it was a very beautiful, very moving, life-changing event. Um, and it's not one of those things. I mean, it's an event, but at the same time, there's a long process that leads up to it, and then the process continues afterward. It's kind of mm, it's a milestone event, but it's a milestone on a very long journey. So we had talked about it. We had talked about Orthodoxy, I think, before, and it was definitely, I was investigating it the last time we talked, but the process kind of, because of the COVID thing, there was only one Orthodox church that was meeting in person in my area. Most of them had gone virtual and gone to Facebook, and one church was like, no, we're not. I mean, they went virtual for like 3 weeks or a month right through Pascha, and they hated it, and they were so upset that both of the priests agreed, no, we're not doing this. We're going in person, whatever. And I found them and started going to that parish and just fell in love, with the liturgy and with the parish and the church itself. I mean, the building, is it's an old historic building, and the beautiful iconography, the architecture, the liturgy service. I mean, when the first time I went, I was so confused and overwhelmed. If you haven't been to Orthodoxy, it's very different than a Protestant experience, in that, like at our church, the only pews we have are along each side of the wall. The whole room is open and everyone's standing. There are a few stands that have icons on them, and when people come in, they go and venerate the icons. Um, and so people are kind of walking in at the beginning of services and venerating all the icons, but everyone is standing together and looking forward, and it's like a play is going on almost. It's like a it's like a it's theater, for lack of a better word, but you're a part of it. You're participating in it. You're not just an audience member. You're not just watching a play. You are part of the play. You are all putting on a play that is your best attempt to stand in awe of the creator of the universe and to be humble enough to approach that presence, and grateful at the same time. And then just the posture of standing the whole time helps you be attentive and helps you focus and remember why you're there.
Mhm.
And just all of these elements rolled together. And the other beautiful thing about Orthodoxy is that everything I learned before being baptized and since all interweaves and interconnects and ties together and all points to Christ. And it's just the most beautiful, cohesive, coherent system that I've found. But it's not even the system part that's important, it's the relationship part that's important, right? It's like the system is just there to help you have a relationship with God, which also dramatically improves your relationship with the people around you, ideally. I mean, I have a little bit of strain on a couple of relationships since becoming Orthodox, because of becoming Orthodox. But for the most part, I have to say most of my relationships have just improved so dramatically that I can't even articulate it. I think we talked
People might
about
not
kind of.
remember.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, people might not remember your story from before, but you went through a number of years as an atheist.
Yes. Yep.
And then just remind us again, what was it that turned you from your atheism back to looking at God?
Well, the first thing that really opened that door was learning about chaos theory, honestly. And that sounds weird, is that studying math brought me to God, but it really did open the door because, I was, as an atheist, I was pretty attached um, to materialism and to determinism. And, I kind of considered myself like a mystical atheist almost. I know it's weird to say that, but like, there was a book written by a doctor, and I can't remember her name for the life of me. I'm sorry for that, but she was a Harvard brain neurologist who had a stroke at a very early age, and it affected the left portion of her brain, and she wrote a book about basically what it was like to see the world from the right brain perspective, without language and without structure, really. And it matched a lot of my mystical experiences that I'd had personally, through meditation or other experiences, and I used that as a justification for materialism, right? I was like, oh, look, yeah, if you break the left part of your right part of your brain sees the world this way, so it is all still material, right? Even though it feels cosmic, it's just a part of the outcome of these material chemical reactions in our brain. Well, learning chaos theory, the problem with chaos theory is that, um, for determinism, is that uh, chaotic systems and complex systems are inherently non-deterministic. So you can know the starting conditions, even if you know the starting conditions and all of the velocities involved of the system, you cannot predict the outcome of the system, and that just fundamentally breaks determinism. That's and this is mathematically proven that a chaotic system is inherently unpredictable. Well, that's really interesting. So, because I work in the whole reason I got into that was I work at a fabrication shop. We custom build usually one of a kind items that are usually very large and very difficult to build, very complex. We build these things out of metal, and our customers are constantly asking us, when is it going to be done? How long is it going to take? And mathematically, the answer is anywhere from 2 to 20 weeks. And they hate it. They hate it, and they think we're lying. But mathematically, that's just the way it is, because there's so many variables involved in building something, especially that's never been built before, that it's very difficult to predict. And when you add up enough things that have a range of possibilities, the overall range of possibilities gets very big, if not infinite. And that is what started breaking my materialism. And then I started looking more into complex systems, and I started looking, and then I got tied into, this is all happening at the same time with Jordan Peterson. He comes on the scene, he starts talking about the Bible in a way that I had never heard anyone talk about the Bible before. I came from an LDS background. I was Mormon growing up, and actually went on a Mormon mission. I was one of those kids who knocked on your door on Saturday morning after you have a hangover. And I was that guy. Hi, I'm Elder Firth. I'm here to wake you up. Uh, but I went to Toronto, Canada for that, and it was great. I mean, I have nothing but good things to say about my Mormon upbringing. I'm very grateful. It helped me to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that a lot of young people fall into. But ultimately, it just wasn't a fit for me. And at 25, I fell away from the church, and I went into various different pursuits trying to get at those big life answers, those big life questions. I went through Scientology, I went through Buddhism, went through Taoism, and I have a Taoist tattoo on my arm. It's Wu Wei. It's action, no action. So the act of doing something without forcing it, basically working with nature instead of against it. So all of that was part of it, but it was just a steady falling down and falling away from the mystical view of the world into materialism and scientism, and then that got broken by chaos theory, and then I started, like I said, got re-exposed through Jordan Peterson, who exposed me to Jonathan Pageau, and it took me a long time to understand what he was even talking about. But as I started understanding it, more of my own personal world started making sense, and things became more coherent. And and I had some personal life tragedies that led me to reevaluate my assertion that I could figure everything out for myself, and decided that I didn't have anything to lose by at least giving church a shot again. And Orthodoxy is so different than the Christian experience I had had as a young man that I was curious and wanted to see what it was like, and it turned out to be
Was
more than I could ever hope for.
Was Orthodoxy the first church that you tried out when you first came back, or did you try some other?
Well, it was the only one I was really interested in. I did go to a Protestant church. My stepdaughter was going to a Baptist church at the time, and I went 2 or 3 times with her, and it wasn't what I was interested in at all. It was I wanted something. I didn't want to just go and get like, and forgive my Protestant brothers and sisters out there. This is no judgment. This is my own weakness. This is my own problem. But I didn't want to just go get lectures about the Bible on Sundays, and then the rest of the week maybe listen to a Christian radio station. I just I wanted a much more um, well, let's put it this way. I grew up on a farm, and my dad was a hard ass and my grandpa was a hard ass, and I wanted something hard. I was on the wrestling team when I was a kid. You can't tell now because I'm fat, but when I was young, I was in really good shape. I used to work out, many hours, and I put a lot of time into ascetic efforts as a young man, just because my dad was a stoic. uh he subscribed to stoicism. I'm not just saying that figuratively. Like, he was a stoic, and he raised his kids as stoics. So we were taught how to be uncomfortable and how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, basically, through very just being made to do very difficult things as a kid. It's just like, here, go, you know, go dig, go build this fence, go dig this hole, go dig this pit, go, see all those sandbags? I need them over here. And then 2 days later, he'd go, why did you move the sandbags? I need you to move them over there. Okay. And it was purposely meant to mess with you. It was purposely intended to make you angry and reactive and submissive at the same time. Where, and just, this is hard. You don't know why you need to do it. I'm telling you to do it. Do it. And you go, okay. And honestly, that model of Christianity, and I'm not saying Orthodoxy is like that. It's not. It's not overbearing. It's not overwhelming. Stoicism and Orthodoxy have some ascetic kind of commonalities, but the difference is that Orthodoxy is with love, and I know my dad loves me and loved me, um, but that experience of growing up, I think, created in me a certain expectation when it came to what was being asked of me, or what should be asked of me spiritually. You know, I wanted something that was going to be difficult and challenging and that could change my whole life, because I felt like if it wasn't hard and if it wasn't piercing every part of my life, it wouldn't have the ability to transform my life, which is what I needed, and need.
I
It's what I need.
I totally resonate with that. 'Cause I remember back when my husband and I had been married just a few years, and we met in a particular church, which was a very solid Bible church, wonderful people, just a great place. Really good, solid Bible teaching. But we both felt that there was really something drastically missing. In um, Before I moved to California, I had been much more involved in churches that were very deep in the area of worship,
Yes.
where
Yes.
worship was very powerful and meaningful. And there's a joke that goes around about some of the Protestant churches that the Trinity is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Scriptures. Holy Spirit is kind of chased out the back door because it's a little scary.
Yeah.
And I understand there has to always be balance. But anyway, we started wandering around looking for a church where we could find um, that sense of meaningful worship. It's been a long journey, and I don't think we've actually found one, but we have found churches where we can deeply participate in community
Yes.
and help in building community. And that is also an aspect of worship that's very important.
Yes.
And we get some of the worship that we need just, by watching YouTube or just in our own personal reflective times. But I totally understand that. And then the other thing that you said about hardness, I mean, there's so many scriptures that teach about that, right? Endure hardness as a discipline. And the thing that always occurred to me when my older daughter was a teenager, in my first go around in life, I became a Christian when I was 30. And my husband at the time became a Christian a few months later, and our daughter, after a summer camp, gave her heart to the Lord. And so the whole family were Christians within about 6 months.
Wow.
And she was in this wonderful youth group that really challenged the kids. It wasn't about games. It wasn't about, oh, let's all have fun together. It wasn't about, let's all listen to rock music. It was really about, here's something worth giving your life to.
Yes.
And so the second time around, I think a lot of people know the story of how I lost my first husband. But anyway, the second time around, I have another daughter, and she's in a youth group, and it's just really all about, let's be trendy, let's be hip, let's attract people with all the cool games that we can play. And they just don't they don't understand that if you want hip and you want cool, you can find it in the world.
Yeah.
In the
Right.
church, you need to have people need to know there's a reason to give your life to something.
Yeah.
And I think that's really missing for our young people in a lot of churches now. So it's good to hear that you have found that in your Orthodox church. Now I understand that you went into this by yourself. Your wife was not yet interested. So then how did things play out at that stage?
Well, yeah. So I was the one who was just like, I'm going back to church. I have to. I'm going to church. I would love for you to come with me. I want you to be there. I think it's really important for us if we're going to be successful as a husband and wife. Because to be honest with you and to be personal with you, our marriage was on the brink. It was about to just to dissolve. And I said, this is the last ditch ever. We tried counseling. We tried, you know, weekend excursions, and we tried the worldly solutions, read this book and, do this workshop. And we try all that, and none of it's working. And I just said, we don't have anything else to lose. I'm going to church. And I would love it if you came with me, but I'm going regardless. And she came. We went to a Greek Orthodox church first, and then COVID hit, and then it was, a few months. We went a couple of times, and then it was like 2 or 3 months, and then I found another parish that was open, and I was like, I'm going to go to church. And I went one time alone, and I met the priest and told him what was going on in my life, and and then I said, you really should come check this church out, because it's I've never felt this way before. And she came with me, and after 2 or 3 times of attending with me, she said, if Christianity is real, and she said, and I'm not sure of that yet, but if it is, this is what it should look like. And the parish has been so welcoming and so kind to me and to my family. They instantly welcomed us and have been kind and open and giving, and they all come up and from the very beginning were hugging my wife and introducing themselves and talking, and the way men come into Orthodoxy, a lot of young men are coming through the door at the parish there, and a lot of them are being introduced through Orthodoxy on YouTube, right? Through Jonathan Pageau, through Jay Dyer. And we all talk, we all have pretty similar political viewpoints and pretty similar philosophical worldviews. And that kind of, it pulls us there, through the traditionalism and seeing how modernity is falling apart and how science only has limited answers. And they're ending up there. But the women who are coming, it's a very different way. I told my wife, I was like, it's like the women in the church are like the peas in our garden, where they're just kind of creeping up the fence and curling around, and then before you know it, you have these little pods showing up with little peas in there. It's like the way the women integrate each other and introduce each other and get to know each other and share their stories and share their lives with each other is much more subtle, and there's no debate, and there's no uh, it's just through love that they bring each other together, and that worked. you know I didn't have the only role I had in introducing my wife to Orthodoxy was the introduction. I, I brought her to church, and God and the women in the church did the rest. And if anything, I stood in the way by trying to talk about it too much. And but glory to God, she was baptized uh, on May 1st, and we go to church together, and um, we pray together, and uh, my daughter comes with us, and she and I had a strained relationship, and it has healed immensely. Uh, I know there's still some tenderness there, but I can't say how powerfully effective and how powerfully healing it has been for my family to become Christian and to become a part of the Orthodox Church. It's unbelievable. And if anyone else told me that this is what happened to their life, I would think that they were lying. But my wife and I joke together, and we talk, and we listen to each other for the first time, and we look forward to church together. And I can't I can't thank God enough for not giving up on me and on my family.
Grace. Grace.
I didn't mean to be so emotional, but there's I
How
can't.
can you help it? How can you help it? I mean,
I can't.
I mean, that's what it is to be united with the Lord, is to have the capacity to feel his feelings and be open to his love and to feel that joy of what it is to walk with him. I mean, there's no point in covering it up.
Yeah.
I have a story to tell about that. I might have told it before, but when I first moved to California, I had just come through a really traumatic time of losing everybody in my family within about a 3-month period. And I was very vulnerable, I guess. And I wanted to find a family within the church, and I was having a hard time making connections with people. I started out by inviting a different couple to lunch with me after church every Sunday, thinking, well, this way I'll get to know people. But there would always come that point in the lunch when they would say, I would ask them a lot of questions, and then there would come a point when they would say to me, oh, tell me about your family. And then I would tell them, well, my husband left me, then my mother had terminal cancer and she lasted a couple of months, and then my divorce was final, and then my father died a month later. And then I would never see these people again or talk to them, because they would avoid me like the plague. Not because they were unkind, but there's just only so much people can handle. And
well, they don't know what to do.
They don't know what to do with that.
They don't know what to do. Yeah.
And I wasn't wise enough about having boundaries about who I let into that private place in my life at the time. And I was very vulnerable. And I'm sure that they might have, I didn't mean it this way, but they might have read it as being very needy, and they didn't feel like they had anything to offer. And so, but the upshot of it was I was not making friends in the church. And that was very difficult for me, because I'm an introvert, but I'm also a people person, which is kind of an odd combination. So I joined the choir because I thought, well, that can be a family. So I'm in the choir. I'm up there singing every Sunday. We have this wonderful choir director who really understood what it meant to worship through choral music. And we're singing a lot of the old hymns as well as new music. And I used to keep tissues stuffed up the sleeve of my dress, because I would inevitably start sobbing in the middle of some song. And I was a little embarrassed about it, but what are you going to do, So one Sunday, this lady came up to me after church and she said, I saw you crying up there. And I said, well, yeah, I can't help myself, And she said, no. She said, I just have to tell you. She said, I've been struggling. I've been going through a period of time when I felt like there wasn't anything for me in Christianity, and I was ready to walk away, and I was going to give it one more chance. And I came to church today. And I saw you crying, and I saw Jesus there. And so we became friends, and she came through a very difficult divorce, and she was a single mom with a young boy growing up, and she had a lot of trials and struggles in her life. But she came into the church and she found healing there, and a family. And so I've never been ashamed of crying publicly, because what do we know how God uses our lives? We just don't know.
No.
But he does. So in his economy, those tears all have meaning. Just like it says, his word never goes forth and returns void. Our tears are gathered up in a bottle, and they have meaning and purpose. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you for sharing that. It's a very moving thing, and it is, a lot of these things are beyond language. You know, a lot of these experiences and emotions, you can't capture how you're feeling by saying something. You know, and um, but I'm grateful for that door being reopened. You know, in my heart, to be able to, um, it's almost like, it's not like God is beating the door down, but it's like every time I open just a little bit, there's this whole flood that just comes in, and it's like, whoa, 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 okay, 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 okay. So I have to like pace it. I have to like, okay, it's a little, whoo,
Yeah.
because really, I went to lunch the other day. I wanted to share this experience with you. I went to lunch the other day with the priest that I had first met with. I met with him when I was going through the biggest crisis of my life, about to lose my family, and I went to, it was catechism class, and then after catechism class, I went up and stood next to him in that way that desperate people do, that need to talk to a priest. And God bless him. I love him so much. I just said, Father, I'm having a really hard time, and he instantly said, "You want to go get a beer and talk about it?" And this was like at 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday, and I'm like, uh, yeah, let's go. So we did, and we talked for 3 hours, and he was very generous with his time. And he was the one who really started introducing me to the relationship side of being Orthodox, the relationship with God, and that's what it's about. It's not about a systematic theology or a rules of do's and don'ts and all. It's just not. It's about a relationship and teaching you what that means. And and anyway, I went to lunch with him just like a few days ago. And in that lunch, it was toward the end of the lunch, and I just said, Father, I, I'm starting to understand a little more of how reality seems to work. I said, I have a bird feeder at my house, and it makes no sense. Like rationally, it makes no sense because they make a mess. And it costs me money, but I get indescribable joy from it. Like I just love it. And every time you open the door, you can see the feeder just kind of swinging because the birds have all lighted as soon as you turn the doorknob, and but I just love it. Like I put out food twice a day for them because that's how much they eat. I have a lot of birds who come to my house, and I get to hear them sing occasionally, but most of them are songbirds. They're just little chickadees, and you know. But I said, it reminds me of the Sermon on the Mount where Christ is saying, consider the lilies of the field, consider the birds. They don't worry about where their next meal is coming from. They don't, and God takes care of them. They don't they don't all just fall out of the sky dead. How much more he loves you, and I feel like a part of that, like I'm participating in being that part of God's economy, right? By irrationally, for no reason, putting out bird food every day and enjoying it. All of these birds are benefiting from it, and I get joy too. But it's not cause effect. There's nothing materialistic about it. There's no way to describe that. And I said, but it's very beautiful, and I really like it. And he smiled and nodded, and then waitress came around, and I said, can I get the check? And I was going to buy lunch for the priest, and she goes away with my card, and she comes back and said, someone has paid for your lunch today. And to an outsider, that just seems like a fun coincidence, but that moved me very deeply after sharing the story of how I was taking care of birds, also showing me that I am also being taken care of. You know, there's a there's a bigger there's a bigger economy there. There's a bigger it doesn't fit in ones and zeros, and it doesn't fit on an Excel spreadsheet, and it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't add up, but it works, and it's undeniable.
It reminds me of a time I was in a singles Bible study when I first moved to California, and there was a man in the Bible study who had cystic fibrosis and had a number of physical challenges and mental challenges. And he worked as a janitor. His name was John. Just a lovely human being, absolutely lovely human being, but he had a lot of challenges. Life was difficult for him. And one of the questions that they were asking during the Bible study is, how do you know that God loves you? So John pipes right up, he's got his hand up, and he says, haven't you ever heard the birds sing?
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, that's how you know.
Yeah. There's a saint who said that they're actually singing hymns in their own language. Like they're singing praise of God.
Well, you know about the humpback whale, right?
I don't know. Well, I know of humpback whales.
Humpback whales, the every herd of humpback whales everywhere on the planet sings the same song.
Mm.
And every year the song changes. So whether they're on one side of the planet or the other side of the planet, they all learn the same song the same year. How does that work?
Mm. And
Now,
they all
I
learn the
have to say,
changes.
I
Yeah.
mean, full disclosure, I heard this. I haven't verified it,
Sure.
but it sounds true to me. So
Yeah. Well, it sounds plausible for sure. Yeah. Especially once you start opening up to this kind of thing, you know.
well, have you ever heard of any of these tribesmen who sing to the birds? They learn the bird songs and they sing to the birds, and they actually indicate that, you know, they can communicate with the birds just by singing the bird song. So it's obviously some kind of a language, you know. So
I didn't know about that, but I did know there was we'll come back to the Western point of view, the Western way of doing things. There was a guy who started recording the chirps of prairie dogs, and the prairie dogs would communicate uh, that there was danger or that there was food, and then also specifics about what kind of danger, whether it was a flying or whether it was someone walking. They had numbers, like they would say there were two walking, you know, it was like, and they
whoa,
even changed the song when the people were wearing different colors. People would wear different masks, and the song would change consistently. Like it would change to a different, slightly different sound, responding to the different changes of the different kinds of threats that were showing up for the prairie
wow,
dogs.
wow, that's
Yeah. He started systematizing prairie dog barks, and he was able to decode some of the changes in their barks. So I think there's a lot more going on that we don't understand, that we don't
yeah,
know,
yeah, for sure.
or that we dismiss. You know.
Yep.
So now you get to tell me about your crazy year of coronavirus in Silicon Valley, which I'm sure is a whole different world.
Well, I mean, our county in California was one of the first counties to shut down and has been one of the most vociferous shutdown counties in the state. So
Mm.
our church shut down, I don't know, March or something last year, and we still have not had. Well, they just last week had um, an in-person service. We did
Mm.
not go because you still have to make reservations ahead of time, and only so many people can go, and still have
Oh,
to be
that's
wearing
so hard.
masks and all of that. And
Yeah. Oh.
um, but but we lead a small group, and so we've kept the small group going via Zoom and kept the fellowship going there. And
Yeah.
periodically we would have like driveway meetings with people. They would come and park at the end of the driveway. You know,
That's so,
so, um,
that's so hard.
we probably went through a year where we didn't do much of anything. And then in the last, I would say 3 or 4 months, it opened up enough to where we could do outdoor dining.
Mm.
So we've gone to outdoor dining quite a bit,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
only supposed to be family by family. So
Mm.
my older daughter and my granddaughter started meeting up with us a few months back, and so we've had fellowship that way. But it's a strange experience, because in some ways it feels like the last year didn't even happen. It's as if the year just disappeared.
Yeah.
It's not as though it was a long, painful time. It was gone.
Yeah.
But I have memories of events that happened during the year, and I have to tell you about one of them.
Okay.
Um, I may have told this story before, so if people have heard it already, they can tune out. But the day before Thanksgiving, I noticed that my husband was dragging his foot a little bit. And I said, "Hey, honey, what's going on?" And he said, "Well, he said, it's that same ankle I had surgery on a few years ago. And sometimes it just bothers me when I'm walking." So I didn't think much of it. So a couple of hours later, he's changing into a different pair of shoes, and I'm watching him tie his shoes, and his left hand is acting very weird while he's tying this shoe. And I said, "What's with your left hand? It doesn't look right." And he said, "It's nothing. Don't worry about it." But I said, "You need to get this checked out. You've got to call the doctor." And I really pushed him on this. And so he called the doctor, couldn't talk to him right away, left a message. And we went out to lunch together, because he's been working from home this whole time. So once in a while we can go out to lunch, because he puts in 12-hour days. So if we go out to lunch, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're sitting there at lunch, and the nurse from the doctor's office calls him, and she starts running through some diagnostic questions. And he's answering the questions like this. He's saying things like, "Well, I first noticed it about 2 weeks ago. It was getting kind of hard to type with my left hand. I couldn't make the fingers work the way they were supposed to work." And she says, "You got to get to the emergency room immediately." And he said, "No, I'll just come into the office and see the doctor if you can give me an appointment." So he makes an appointment with the doctor. We come home. He says, "I don't want to go to the doctor. It's too much work." And our 26-year-old daughter's living with us. And she heard the story, and she said, "Dad, you are going. I'm driving you. Get in the car right now."
Good
So
girl.
yeah, he ends up in the emergency room. They did an MRI. They said, "You have a massive brain bleed. You
Oh,
were
wow.
one cough or one bad bowel movement away from death. And you have to have surgery immediately." But it's COVID, right? So I can't be there with him. Nobody can be there with him. He's in the emergency room for 14 hours waiting for a surgical theater to be available. I mean, I was starting to panic, but I'm putting out prayer requests everywhere, just everybody I can think of to pray with me about this.
Yeah.
He has the surgery like 8 o'clock in the morning on Thanksgiving. And the surgery went pretty well, and he started to recover for about a day. But I was having a hard time getting any information from the hospital, because it's Thanksgiving weekend. They're short staffed because of COVID. There's all the COVID stuff going on in the hospital. And when I finally got through to somebody, it was probably 2 days after he'd had the surgery, and they were able to, his phone had run out of power, and nobody had thought to charge it for him. So he didn't have access to a phone. He couldn't have managed it anyway, because between the trauma of the surgery and the trauma of the brain bleed, it had pushed his brain mass to the left, so that it had done damage to the right hemisphere of his brain, which is what controls the left hand, right? So when I finally got a chance to talk to him, he didn't sound good at all. I said,
Mhm.
this can't be right. He should be recovering. So I called the surgeon. Oh, the other thing was the surgeon was one of these out of hospital surgeons who was just there because it was a weekend. And so he's off someplace else. Someone else is doing his rounds at this hospital. He's not even seeing my husband. But I said to the surgeon, something's wrong. You need to have somebody check into it. And they run another MRI, and apparently the anesthesiologist had inadvertently left some nitrous oxide in his brain, and it was expanding, and it was continuing to expand and push the brain to the left in his brain cavity.
Oh my goodness.
So they had to do another procedure to off gas that nitrous oxide, and then the recovery was very slow. So he was hospitalized for almost a full week, and then he went to rehab for 2 weeks, and I couldn't see him during any of this time. And at first, I couldn't even talk to him because he couldn't manage the phone and nobody was there to help him. But God always provides. One of the women in our life group was a neurosurgeon, and she knew somebody at that hospital. And so she contacted one of her friends and found the guy that was doing rounds, who saw my husband every day. And she lined it up with him to do a FaceTime with me every day when he was with George.
Nice.
So I was able to see whether or not he was making progress.
Yeah.
And then he was in rehab for 2 weeks, but I couldn't see him when he was in rehab either. And rehab was pretty grueling experience because he was in a room with 3 other people. The hospitals had gotten so full with COVID patients that they were outsourcing all the non-COVID patients to the rehab centers so that they could be taken care of and not be exposed to COVID. But that meant that there were a lot of seriously ill people in the rehab center who needed round-the-clock care. So my husband never got any sleep at all while he was there.
Oh, that's terrible.
So when he came home after 3 weeks of this, he looked, I mean, my husband is super fit. He's 60 years old. He's always been a runner, exercise, crazy fit guy. But he looked like he was 85 years old. He's all tilted to the left. He could hardly walk. He was he was 20 pounds underweight. I mean, I just can't even tell you what he looked like. It was pretty shaky, except that I'd had hundreds of people praying and had just seen God's hand in this whole thing all the way along the line. And so I was perfectly confident that everything was going to be all right, even though I'm looking at him.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, Alexa is talking. So anyway, he really, really looked bad. But you know what? I started feeding him good food, and he started sleeping 10, 12 hours a night. And they had some rehab people coming to the house a couple times a week. And within 10 days, he came home on December 15th. On Christmas Day, he was completely back to normal. Still a few pounds underweight, but walking by himself, able to go out for walks every day by himself and just enjoy the birds and singing and all that. And here's the crazy thing. He never stopped working during this whole time. He has a really high stress job,
Yeah.
very important job in his company. He's kind of the linchpin for a lot of things in his product line. And he never stopped working during the whole time that he was sick.
Oh my goodness.
And he even had been working on a Harvard Business School class online, and he insisted on finishing that work so that he could get his certificate. So he's a
Wow.
remarkable person. But anyway,
Yeah,
that was
sounds
my
like
best Christmas gift, was to see my husband back. And I
yeah.
haven't stopped grinning since, really.
Wow. That's a real challenge. That is tough. Yeah. That is it's one thing, my wife and I were talking about this today. It's one thing to, we turned our lives around and we are going to church and we're being enormously blessed for our meager, paltry efforts. And and it's easy to be grateful at those times, and then and it's easy to slip into just complacency. But what I was going to say is, it's also very challenging to just remain faithful and say, they will be done when things aren't going the way that you would expect, or that you think they should, or that you want them to go. It's an extra level of challenge to your faith, to feel a withdrawal, or to feel confusion over what's happening, and not not have a clear vision of what the future might look like, and
Well, I think one of the things that was so helpful to me was because we had this small group that we've been connected to all through COVID, even for several years before that. And they were all praying for us, and they were all,
mm,
making sure everything was okay with us. And I have a lot of other Christian friends all across the country who were praying with us.
mm,
And because I felt so connected to them and supported by them, and I had a complete confidence that everything was going to be okay, regardless of what happened, because
mm,
that's sort of the nature of the way that, I mean, like you say, it's very hard to put into words, but I, I was going to say the thing that was most helpful, or not most, but was very helpful to me, was one of the things that Jordan Peterson teaches about is how important it is to have gratitude and humility.
yeah,
So I had been spending a lot of time thinking about that, and how everything um, really nicely fits into that paradigm of gratitude and humility.
yeah,
It really covers everything. And the reason that's so helpful is that when you are in a space where you're under stress and under attack in many ways, and lots of difficulties going on, the more you can simplify what you have to be thinking about, the better it is. And if all you have to think about is gratitude and humility, it can really keep you on course.
mm,
Just spend my days in gratitude to God for his goodness and his love and his safekeeping, and then you can see the events that happen through that lens of gratitude,
mhm,
and just keep your heart in a place of humility, knowing that I don't have the answers, and I don't have to do this on my own. In fact, I can't do it on my own, and I have a father who's going to care for me. So it just simplifies everything in a very lovely way.
mm,
And there were other lovely things that came out of it. I have a 26-year-old daughter, and we haven't always had the greatest relationship, but I had hip surgery. I had hip replacement surgery in September. That was a pretty challenging recovery, and
mm,
had just started getting to the place where I could really navigate without difficulty, or without too much difficulty, when this all happened. And she had helped me, been very helpful during that time. But when this happened with my husband, she really just stepped up, man. She was
mm,
there. She was solid. She was everything that she could have been in terms of helping and supporting, and um, that was really wonderful to see. You know, so I
yeah,
had so many things to be thankful for. To be thankful, first of all, that I was part of God's family, and He had hooked me into these hundreds of people that I could contact and say, please pray with me for my husband. That's an amazing feeling.
yes, that's very true. I grew up with strong impulses to be a rugged individualist living in a mountain cabin by myself.
You have the
And
look.
what's that?
You have the look.
Yeah, yeah. The Orthodox beard helps with that. So I did. I wrote a play about it when I was 16. I wanted to, like, I watched My Side of the Mountain, and where the word fruit grows, and I learned how to trap and fish and hunt and all that stuff. I did. I wanted to live on my own. And as I got older, I realized that yeah, you can live alone, but like there was a guy who did that, and he made a documentary about it, and he went into the Canadian wilderness and built a cabin and lived next to a lake and lived on his own and built everything from scratch and lived in. But he had a friend who flew him supplies once a week. So
Mm.
so it's kind of, it's like, even at the edge of humanity and human existence, he still had a best friend who came and visited him, and he still went home in the winter for like 3 months, in Michigan. And he did it just to see if he could, but he never really severed the tie to humanity. And I think uh, there was an important lesson for me in that, in learning about that, and in learning him about that side of him, is that usually when you're in that kind of situation, you're probably running from something. And I think he was. And I think that he found out that, one, he couldn't get away from it, and two, that it would probably be better if he went home and faced the problem rather than trying to run away from it in the mountains. And that's tied to that part of being the human family. We're none of us are just an island unto ourselves. I'm not a collectivist. I'm not not a group person. I hate group projects at work. I hate group projects in school. I just don't like it. But um, there are things you can do as a group that you can't do as a person. And there are things that you can accomplish as a group that you can't accomplish as a person. And there is a lot of joy and satisfaction that comes from being a part of a family and a community that you can't replicate, or and you can't replace with anything else. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson that the people around me here in Utah, we've had a very different idea about. COVID has been much more polarizing probably here. There, I get the sense that everyone was on the same page of freaking out. And here it was more like a quiet resignation. And there were some people who were very concerned, especially, but it seemed to be more generational here. The young people were all, which is, it's an inversion too from when I was a kid. When I was a kid, all of the teenagers would have been like, we're not wearing a mask. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And here, like my daughter's friends were asking me why I wasn't wearing a mask. And I'm just like, what happened here? Why? What? You guys are supposed to be the rebels. You're supposed to be like rejecting authority. You're supposed to be rejecting like all these stupid things that, people who think they're smarter than you are telling you. And you're just like falling. Like, that was a real big eye opener to me, that my
Well, I
daughter's
think everybody,
friends were like criticizing me. My daughter's 14. So they were just like, why aren't you wearing a mask? I'm like, there's a lot of reasons I could tell you. there's 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 a lot of reasons. Science doesn't back it up. My doctor friends don't back it up. I've looked at the specifications of the masks. They're not made for this. The coronavirus is too small. It doesn't make a big difference. It doesn't make a significant difference. It's like blowing golf balls through a horse fence. It just doesn't. People are nervous and they want to do something visible to feel better, and they don't know how to calm themselves down, and so they're putting a security blanket on their face. And that's what I would tell the kids.
here in California, it wasn't that people were doing it because they thought it would make them feel better. They were doing it because the state said to do it, and everybody was just very docile, and they
Yeah.
did.
And
I found that, I was very docile and I did it. And that's probably the most just troubling thing, because, well, partly it is that I want to choose very carefully what hill I die on.
yeah.
And that wasn't a hill I wanted to die on. There's
Yeah.
a
I
deep
will die on the vaccine hill. I will die on the vaccine hill. You want to give me that mandatory vaccine? No way. No way. Mm-mm. I'll die on that hill.
Well, if you look at it as a mandatory vaccine, yeah, I could understand that, but
Here's the problem I have with it. The problem I have with the vaccine is that, one, they're calling it a vaccine, and it's unlike any other thing that we've ever done before. Two, there is not a debate about it. There's not a discussion about it. If you do not accept the line, then you are censored. You're muted. That's not science. That's not science. They're using science as an excuse. They're using science as an apron. But there's no scientific discussion going on, because the guy who invented ivermectin is banned from the internet. The guy who, he's like Brett Weinstein. I really value his courage in pulling these people onto his show, which, and they last on YouTube for a matter of hours before they disappear, where he's trying to talk about this from a scientific point of view and from an evolutionary biologist point of view, a true expert in the field, not allowed to talk about it. That to me tells me there's something, even if it's innocuous, an inoculation that's innocuous, even if it is innocent or even if it is not dangerous, the fact that they're giving lotteries and prizes and ice cream and lap dances and food, like all of these appeals to the passions to get you to go along with the vaccine. All of these things are red flags to me.
I've
They
noticed.
all
I've
just say
noticed all
no,
that.
no.
Yeah, I've
So
noticed all of that stuff, and well, number one, I think it's very interesting how these things are playing out in the world, because he's actually turning people the other direction, because anybody at all who sees what happens to Brett Weinstein's channel, even if they don't agree with him, they have to see that that's a problem.
yes.
I mean, a lot of people have been turned around in
Well,
their
actually,
thinking just
no.
by seeing what happened to Jordan
I'm sorry.
Peterson. They look at how he was vilified, and at first they went along with it thinking, yeah, he must be a terrible person. And then they stumble on some video of his, some 3-minute clip, and they go, wait a minute, this guy talks sense.
Mm-hmm.
And after 6 months of hating him, they just turn around. And what occurs to them at that point is, man, we are being played by the media. We are being lied to. We are being pushed around like sheep. Um, all of that's going on. But the thing I thought was very interesting about the Brett Weinstein thing is that both of those doctors had been vaccinated. They both both got the vaccination.
Maybe.
Well, no, they did. They talked about it on his show.
Maybe. I'm really skeptical of all of those things
Oh,
now,
you think
right?
they were lying when they said they had
I
been?
don't know. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't trust that anymore, because
Well, I just don't see why they would.
that may destroy their credibility, or they may be making a play to get more credibility by saying they've had the vaccine. I don't know. Like I mean, I've seen the videos where they literally just they use an empty syringe for video showing people getting the vaccine. They use it. They just don't even. They just fake it. So I don't believe any of that anymore. I don't. I'm so skeptical of even people who are on the right side of the argument, which I don't know what that is, honestly.
Mhm.
There's so much framing and posturing and staging that I don't even, you can't make sense of it. You can't,
Well, I
you
mean, we
can't,
know that's a problem in every arena, right? That
yes,
it's very
yes.
difficult to tell where the truth is.
Yes, and people have become aware of it. They've become self-aware of it, right? Like that's the. I just saw this is going to sound unrelated, but I saw a trailer for a video game, and the whole trailer is just a postmodern narration of what's happening in the trailer. It's a completely self-aware trailer, like commenting on itself. And my brother was talking to me about it, and I just said, this has become such a cliche in art that there are academic papers being written about self-referential postmodern art. So it's not saying anything anymore. But we've gone so far down that road that I don't trust anyone who says they're an expert anymore. And I don't trust myself either.
Mm.
I'm very cynical of all of it. I was in the store, I was in the grocery store, and I was an ardent not mask wearer. The only place I wore a mask was in Costco, and that was because they would chase you down, and then I just punched a bunch of holes in a mask so they would leave me alone. Other than that, I didn't wear a mask the whole time. Nowhere. So I was at the grocery store and I was just shopping, and almost everyone in Utah did wear masks. There were not many conscientious objectors. If you did spot one in a store, you were instant friends. It's like, hey, let's go to a barbecue. I know you and I were going to have something in common. But anyway, I was in the store and I was shopping, and this guy was behind me, and he just goes, what makes this guy so special? How come he doesn't have to wear the mask? And then I realized, it took me a minute, but I realized, oh, he's talking about me. And so I just turned around and I just said, just take it off, man. Just take off the mask. And he goes, well, we all have to wear it. What makes you so special? I'm like, just take it off. You don't have to wear it. There's no mask police. We're in a grocery store. And he goes, well, what about the signs on the door? I said, did you follow all the speed limit signs on the way here? Like, what? What do you mean the signs? Like, who cares? It's just like, it's astonishing
I
to me.
have to say, I'm very susceptible to signs.
Ah,
I
see,
grew up in a military household, and so, whatever the law says, that's what I'm going to do.
I see, and I'm like, I've got that anti-authoritarian, libertarian streak in me. Remember the guy who wanted to live on a mountain by himself?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
where,
there's
I
a little
understand
part
there's a
of,
group thing, but it's a risk tolerance thing in my mind.
yeah,
There are certain people who are more comfortable with risk, and as a society, we've gotten more and more risk averse over time. You see that in any culture, safety has become part of every company, right? Oh, we care about the safety of our employees and blah, blah, blah. If you think your company cares about the safety of your employees, go to that same company in another country, like in a third world country, and tell me how much they care about safety. They don't care about safety. it's all word talk. But people, like normal people, have gotten so programmed by that. Now they're all very risk averse, and they want to impose that same anxiety on everyone around them. And if you don't feel anxious, they think you're crazy.
well, I mean, that's the play that the media has been making for decades.
Yes,
Yes,
I agree with you. Yes,
and
that's what people have been
it's
pushed
the
to.
play
Yes.
that marketers have been making for decades. Keep you anxious because then you're going to buy whatever it is that they're promoting,
Yes.
whether it's some
Yes.
beauty thing that you need or some particular kind of clothing or whatever. But I think there's also another side of this. And in my own case, I wore the mask not because I was told to wear the mask, but for me, it was a matter of there were members of my family that were very, very concerned about me.
Mm.
My older daughter particularly had read everything there was to read, and she started buying masks even before they shut the country down because she had been reading about what was going on in China, and she was smart enough to buy stuff up before it was not available. She had gone and bought a bunch of toilet paper before. So that's what saved us because they wiped out the Costco the first day around here, and there was no toilet paper to be
They
had.
wiped it out.
Yeah, so to speak. But anyway, she wanted me to wear masks because she was very concerned about me because I'm in that age range, and the vaccine, I got vaccinated because my husband insisted that I get vaccinated.
Mm.
I said I didn't see the need for it because to me, the percentages of people that get sick with this are very, very small. And even in our county, which, shut down and continue to be shut down for a long, long time, because there were a lot of cases in the county. If you actually ran the numbers, the number of cases in the county were less than 1%, 2% of the people in the county that had
Mhm.
the disease.
Right.
And, like 1/10 of 1% or something of those people were hospitalized, and even smaller percentage were dying. So
Right.
it didn't make sense to me that we should be afraid all the time. Unless I'm going to go out and be exposed to a couple thousand people in a day, my chances of running across somebody with COVID was very, very small.
Right. Especially
But
considering you would drive, and driving is 100 to 1,000 times more dangerous
yeah,
than that. You think
but,
nothing
but
of
on
being
the other
exposed to
side, I
2,000 cars, right?
on the other side, I mentioned that we had this friend who is a neurosurgeon, and she was very open about how scary it was when the hospital started filling up, and
Mm.
they didn't have enough ICU room, and
Mhm.
so I know it wasn't fake, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you kind of feel like, oh, it's fake. They're showing pictures of some other ICU, but no, here in our county, the ICUs were filling up. And then my husband was hospitalized during that time, and and all the ICUs were filled up, and so they
Yeah.
even had to move him out of the ICU sooner than he should have been moved out of the ICU, because they needed those beds for all these COVID people that were coming in, and they wanted to protect him at all costs, protect him from COVID, because if he should cough when he was in recovery, it would be, devastating to his
Right.
recovery.
Yeah.
So I know it wasn't fake, that there were people sick and people dying from
Yes.
COVID. Although in all of my friend community, all over the United States and all over the Bay Area, I only know of one person who died from COVID. And that was not one of my friends, but it was a friend of a friend.
Mhm.
And so there are things about it that don't exactly ring true to me, but then on the other side, I have the neurosurgeon friend who tells me that yes, the hospitals are filling up.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah,
and
we
you have a
don't know
different
what
risk
the truth is,
profile than
but
I do, right? You have a different risk assessment than I do. And that makes total sense. I understand where you're coming
well,
from.
I don't have a risk assessment for myself. I felt perfectly safe,
Mm.
but
Mm.
my husband says, I want you to get vaccinated. Okay, I
Yeah.
believe in following my husband's guidance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's important.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm certainly not going to divide family over not wearing a mask when my children are concerned for my health, and
Right.
I want them to love me and be concerned for me. So,
Yes.
I had my
That I
reasons.
understand. Yeah.
I had my reasons for submitting that were aside from submitting to the state. But I also see the problem that is occurring because it seems that we're building a populace who is becoming more and more subservient to the state. And I think that's, in the long run, that's going to be a problem. But I
Not
don't
only
know if
more subservient, but happy to be it.
yeah,
Happy to be subservient.
I kind
Happy
of
to
feel like
hand this
the
over
horse
and to
has
feel
left
safe.
I think the horse has left the barn, though. I mean, I don't know how, I think the only thing that would ever turn that around is enough people who are following the Jordan Peterson bandwagon of speaking truth, at least don't lie, and these men that are rising up and going into faith, either whether it's through the Orthodox Church or the Catholic Church, or however it's happening, those
Mhm.
who are meeting God and are being strengthened and are interested in truth and reality. Um, Aside from that, I don't know that there's really a lot to. And of course, God is sovereign and God is good, and so I'm not worried. I'm not
Right.
anxious about that. I'm not anxious about that at all, because the scripture says that the time will come. It may not be this time, but the time will come when it becomes so dark in the world that those who are his will shine like stars in the universe. And it's got to be really dark out before you can see the stars. We know that. And
Yeah.
so we know that dark times are coming. We don't know when that's going to be. We don't know whether that's now or whether we're still supposed to stand and fight at this point. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
we can listen for his voice.
Yes, I agree with you. And there was, I can't remember where I heard it. I heard it just recently in a video, and they said that somebody was asking their priest about the end times, and they were very anxious about what's happening. And the priest said, "Look, I don't know. No one knows when Christ is coming again. No one knows when the Antichrist is coming. No one knows how all this is going to unfold. But we do know you're going to die sometime in the next 60 years.
Mhm.
So you should probably focus on that and get ready for that,
Mhm.
because we know that's going to happen." And that's kind of, that has calmed me down a lot, where it's like, look, just focus on your relationship with God. And
Mhm.
it goes back to that story that I told earlier in the conversation about the birds. I mean, the birds don't worry about where their next meal's coming from.
Yeah.
And we can learn from that. We don't need to be prepared and worry and have, you know 5 years of food storage. And I mean, I have some basic needs, but more so that I can help other people if things get bad,
Mhm.
than caring about, because those things only last so long anyway. So you can,
Yeah.
so it's more in a spirit of being able to bring something to the community and say, hey, I've got this. um, but it's I agree with you, and I share your feeling. I don't feel anxious anymore about it. I definitely feel like, people are be, people around here, as a result of COVID, have definitely become much more aware and grateful for person to person interaction and gathering in person. Like our priest, in the past, he was recording catechumen classes, so if you missed it, you could just listen to it online. He said, I'm not doing that anymore. If you want to be a part of the class, you need to come and be here and learn. But if you can't be here, you miss it. Because this personal interaction of being in the same room and looking at each other has meaning and has a powerful effect on us. And I think that's the one positive thing that has come about from COVID-19 in our family and in my circle of friends, is that everyone is much more grateful. I leave the door open in the evening, because we have a park just across just the next street over. There's a big park there, and there's a baseball field, and they're always playing baseball games in the evening, and you can hear the crowd cheering. Nothing brings me It brings me like this indescribable joy to hear the sound of a crowd cheering for, you know, some 14-year-old kids out there playing baseball. It's beautiful, because it's we're human, again, and things feel good. And I fear that, they were pushing and pushing and pushing, and now they're letting back so that they can push some more. But what will be, and there's nothing I can do to stop that. But I can definitely reconnect with my friends and family, and we definitely spend a lot more time together physically than we ever did. So I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, I'm firmly in the I will never get the vaccine camp, but I also don't begrudge anyone who wants to. I totally understand that. I just don't feel like I don't under. I'm very skeptical and very cynical about, or I'm very, mm, alerted by all of the strange pressure and manipulation that's being done to try to push people in that direction. It's like, oh, we're too stupid to figure it out for ourselves, and we can't be convinced by reason, so let's try enticing them. It feels kind of, it feels a little insulting, to be honest.
Well, what it reminds me of, and I was thinking about this a few months ago when I started seeing all it. Well, in California, the governor announced lottery, $50.
Yeah,
It's $1,050 winners or $100,050 winners, something like that, and then a 50,000, a number of $50,000 winners to take the vaccine, which you're supposed to want, right? And I'm
so
looking at this ad,
taxpayers
and
are
I'm thinking,
paying for people to take the
yeah,
vaccine.
I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, when my daughter was 3 years old, was kind of hard to get her potty trained because I had started using these pull-ups in
Yeah,
place of the diapers because I didn't realize that pull-ups just sort of lengthen the whole process of potty training because,
Right.
you know, there's no cost to them of having an accident, basically.
Yes. Yes. It makes it comfortable to continue doing what they were doing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I was trying all sorts of, you know, have a little jar on the back of the toilet that's got M&Ms in it. If you make your wee wee in the potty, you get your M&M, you know. That only made it worse because she was smart. She had it figured out. If this is something you got to give me a bribe to do, it must be something I don't want to do.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
she went the other direction.
Yeah. We would probably get along then. Yeah. Her
Yeah.
and I would probably get
Yeah, well, she's still got that stubborn streak, but she was one of the first ones that wanted to get the vaccine, man. She was waiting for her number
Mm,
to come up because
mm.
they did a successful number on creating anxiety in the millennial
Yes.
age group.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I
But
think
but
they're more prone to it than we
anti-vax
are.
the anti-vaccine people and the anti-mask people are doing just as stellar a job of making people anxious. And so I have my suspicions about both sides.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
For me, it was my dad passed in April of last year, April 28th of 2020. And the last conversation I had with him, he said, I'm so disappointed that America was so quickly willing to give up their freedoms. He said, I marched at the state capitol in 1978 in Utah against helmet laws.
Mhm.
And he said, I never thought it would get this bad this fast.
Mhm.
And the helmet law, yeah, it doesn't make sense on paper that, people should, why would you object to helmets? They save your life. Some people should be allowed the freedom to roll the dice. You need different risk profiles in a culture to have different heterogeneity. You don't want everyone the same. You don't, and to me, both sides are important. You need people who want the vaccine, even though it's not like any vaccine we've ever done before, and we don't know what the risk profile is, and we don't know what the long-term effects will be. To me, those people are taking much more risk than I am, because my risk is known in that I know what the risks of getting COVID are, and I know that it could be potentially deadly to me because I'm overweight and I have high blood pressure and I'm in my 40s and I'm a man. All of those things put me into a risk profile that's higher than normal for COVID-19. However, I would rather take the known risk than the unknown risk of the long-term effects of what the COVID-19 could be. And I think both sides are valid and okay. I just don't understand the pressure. I don't understand the dividing pressure that we're seeing. We've never seen this about a vaccine before. There's flu shots all the time. Yeah, you see commercial, oh, get your flu shot. But this isn't like that. I'm hearing the government paying for advertisements of an old Navajo woman saying, I wanted to get together with my family again, so I got the vaccine. It's like so manipulative. That's what galls me. It's
Mhm.
not the choice itself. I as a libertarian by heart, I think everyone should have the choice, but I think people should be allowed to be stupid. Because sometimes what looks stupid in the short term might be not so stupid, and vice versa. We can't predict the future. We can't know. And hedging our bets against a known risk for the COVID-19 by taking an unknown risk in taking an experimental vaccine that was only tested on a few thousand people before it was rolled out, to me, is a risk profile I'm not comfortable with.
Mhm.
But I see both sides, and I think there should be a discussion about this. It should be able to talk about it.
I totally agree. I
We
guess
probably won't be able to talk about it. Like, this video is probably going to get knocked down.
I know, right?
It's so tragic. It's so tragic.
Especially since you use the I word.
Oh, right. I know.
I
I
think the
forgot.
I
I'm
word might get
sorry.
Because
I'm
now,
sorry.
oh, no,
I forget
no,
about that stuff.
I don't know if you know this, but now when you publish a YouTube video, there used to be, you'd have your first page where you'd put all the details in and information in the description section, and you'd have your second page where you have to sign off on whether this is something that children can watch or not watch or something. And then you have your final page where you publish. Now there's a third hoop you have to jump through, which is we're going to check to see if there's anything problematic, and we'll prevent the publication of the video even before it goes public
I'm
if there's
sorry.
a problem. So every video goes through that last hoop now,
Mm.
and you're just watching that. The last one I did, it kept saying the checking is taking longer than usual, meaning page 3 is taking longer than usual. And I thought, what did we talk about that might get us booted, Because I'm
I'm
usually
sorry.
pretty, I'm interested in telling the truth, but I'm also interested in having the truth that we do tell available to people.
Yeah.
And not have it booted off the internet. So
If we need to edit this in any way, I totally understand. I'm not
no,
going to be
no,
upset
I'm
about
not
it.
going
I
to edit
understand.
it. We'll just see what
But
happens.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I wasn't as sensitive to that as I should have been,
Oh,
because
I'm listen, I'm not
it's
saying,
hard to keep up with the rules,
yeah,
frankly.
exactly. I'm just saying we are definitely tumbling down the rabbit hole with this stuff, down
I
into
know.
Wonderland for sure.
Which in itself is a sign of something wrong
Yeah,
to me.
definitely.
That's bad.
Well,
I mean, I'm
would,
okay.
oh,
Well, let me do the disclaimer. I graduated from high school with a 2.5 GPA, and that's because I got good test scores, but I didn't do my homework. I'm an idiot. I'm self-educated. I read too much, and nothing I say is true or real. I'm sorry. If you listen to me for medical advice, you have taken your life into your own hands, and you're listening to someone who uh, has 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 a mental condition that qualifies for considerations on the Americans with Disabilities Act. So just take all I say with a huge grain of salt, and know that I'm just a hick from the backwoods of Utah, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for speaking frankly about things that I'm not an expert on. I don't know anything about it. This is
well,
all from my gut feeling.
I'm super thankful that I have people like you who will speak frankly about things. So I mean, you don't ever need to be sorry about it for me. I will, I have to go pretty soon, but I will tell you a little story about when I was a state representative back in Iowa. I was given the opportunity to chair a subcommittee on seatbelts.
Mm.
And because somebody was trying to pass a law that seatbelts would be mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
Up to that point, they were in the cars, they were available, but it wasn't mandatory that you locked yourself in.
Right.
And so the bill was handed to me, and I just sat on it. I wasn't even going to bring it to a floor vote. I just stuck it in my desk and sat on it until enough people came to me and said, "You've got to get that bill out." And they took it away from me and gave it to some other subcommittee chair that would get it out on the floor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I
Yeah.
had my own libertarian streak that said people ought to have a choice about whether they take advantage of these safety things or not.
Yes.
But in the intervening years, we have certainly seen probably hundreds of thousands of lives saved by the use of safety belts. So I
I'll
raised
withhold
my
my
first daughter in a car where the only way you could keep your kids safe was to put your arm out like this to keep them from flying through the air if you had to stop fast.
Yeah.
It was many years, even after she was an adult, I'm always going like this, but there's something to be said for baby seats, there's something to be said for it. So I don't know, these things are very complicated.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think uh, I will just put a little bit of a slant on it by saying that as we've gone further and further into modernity and secularity, and that has been associated, or that has been accompanied by an increasing level of anxiety about death, and our own mortality. And I think a lot of people try to avoid the subject,
Mhm.
and they go to great lengths to bring more lives into the world, and then also prolong our lives while we're here. And I don't know, I've had grandparents who had long, prolonged, difficult um, senior citizen years, and then I lost my father at the age of 63, or he was 63, and it was very quick. One day he was fine, and the next day he was gone. And I would have to say, there's living longer doesn't mean always living better,
Mhm.
and living more doesn't always mean living better. And I'm not arguing for infant mortality. I'm not arguing that we should kill off old people. I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing that um, imposing it feels like people are using anxiety to push more and more social control into place. And they used helmet laws, and then it was seatbelt laws, and then it was, the safety rules at work. And then, it's like people are just becoming more and more risk averse. And I think it's a symptom of people being more and more secular and more anxious about dying and about their own mortality. But that's just my armchair philosopher view
Well,
of what's
actually,
going
that
on.
sounds like it would be a pretty interesting topic for a lengthier conversation sometime in the future.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I
So
like
this has been just a delight, Jeremy. It's been so lovely to talk with you, and I want you to give your wife and your daughter my best, and I'm
I
so
will.
thankful that you guys have found a place where you can walk with the Lord. So
Glory to God. We're very grateful. We're constantly just kind of shaking ourselves like, is this real? you know, it's
yeah,
beautiful.
it's
So
real.
thank you
That's the
for
definition
thank
of
you
reality.
for what's that?
That's the definition of reality.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this journey with me, and thank you for listening to my long ranty stuff, and allowing me to share my journey with you. I'm I was really looking forward to our conversation, and it didn't let me down. It's been very enjoyable for me as well. Thank you.
Well, it's been a privilege to get to know you, Jeremy. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Karen. I feel the same. We'll talk again soon.
Bye-bye.
See ya.